Good evening, my friends. This is the Grimflayer. Hope you're all doing really well, and yes, you read the title correctly. We're playing yet another competitive league in replay form with Golgari Midrange, everybody's favorite modern deck. Now, I don't want you guys to get spoiled. This is anomalous. I do have kind of an unusual amount of free time over the last couple days that's allowed me to upload multiple league videos. I think this is my third in the last 4 days. It's not a level of content that I'm able to maintain long term. So like I said, please don't get spoiled by this, but let's just enjoy this while it lasts. I've said before, guys, I get really busy in my life, but I am playing for this channel as much as I can. So I hope the proof is in the pudding here, and I hope you enjoy this league. Just thanking my patrons as always before we get started, and a friendly reminder to those of you out there watching, if you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting me on Patreon, and especially liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel if you're not already doing so. All of the above really helps me grow and is dearly and duly appreciated. So without further ado, let's play some Golgari Midrange, let's play some Fair Magic in Modern. Our opponent likes their 7, and I guess we like ours. You know, I guess we like it. It's obviously doesn't really have any interaction, but looks like our opponent's going to be doing the interacting for us. So, Inquisition of Kozilek takes away our Dark Confidant, leaves us with Tarmogoyf Tribal. So, sure, we draw another land. Not very good. Treetop Village passed to you. So, we don't really know what the opponent's on quite yet after that Blood Crypt Inquisition. Even this looting, it could still be a couple different things, but we see Temur Battle Rage and Steam Vents hit the yard, so we now know that we are against Grixis Shadow. And that's all they've got for the turn. So Tireless Tracker is a potentially good draw. We still don't have any interaction besides this Field of Ruin, so it's going to be Tarmogoyf and pass. Opponent is going to fetch a Watery Grave and dismember the Tarmogoyf, so they're down to 10. Potentially in range to roll out a Shadow, and it looks like they're going to roll out 2 of them with a Polluted Delta left uncracked. So, alright, pretty good start from our opponent here, but they're down to 1 card in hand. So we have a few options here. Number 1 is to play out a Tarmogoyf and pass. That's not very mana efficient, but it's a reasonable play. Number 2, we could play the Tireless Tracker and pass. That is mana efficient, but I'm not that high on that play. The clear best play here, in my opinion, is Liliana of the Veil, then Edict. The big problem with that is if their last card is Stubborn Denial. But, you know, they've interacted pretty well with us so far. They've rolled out a pair of Shadows on the play, turn 3. So I think we have to go for the highest upside line here, which is Lily. And she resolves, so that's great. We're going to be very happy to trade 1 for 1 here. Trade a Lily for a Shadow, and then force them to attack her, most likely, with the remaining Shadow, which they do. Then they just pass, and we are rewarded for that decision by drawing yet another Lily of the Veil, and I think it's correct, again, to just run her out here, and we'll go ahead and Edict that away. Feels great. Liliana of the Veil, so good against Shadow, no question about that. Opponent's on the dig, they're on the hunt, they find Street Wraith and Mishra's Bauble, so seeing lots of cards here, but they're going to go ahead and fetch following the Bauble activation, and then they're going to get to draw on our upkeep. They've got 2 cards in hand. Alright, we draw Thoughtseize, so interesting, but couple options here. So number 1 would be to lead on the Thoughtseize. We have an okay chance of clearing out their hand. I don't mind that, and that's the best line against, like, exactly Fatal Push. But the other thing we could consider doing is just taking the Lily up and playing double Tarmogoyf, and if we tick the Lily up, we're going to pitch the Thoughtseize, going to hang on to the tracker, just as an extra body. Obviously, following up with the land draw next turn would be good as well. So, in the end, I went ahead and decided to roll up the Lily. They lose a Temur Battle Rage, okay? Not a card that is particularly relevant at this stage, it seems, but we'll go ahead and have our own double threat turn. Instead of double Shadow, it's going to be double Goyf. So they did have a Fatal Push, so there would have been some good good results from that Thoughtseize, but still, I'm pretty happy with a 6/7 Tarmogoyf into Liliana, too. And the opponents just got nothing. They just play out a land, and they're empty-handed. Then they draw off the Mishra's Bauble, so they've got one unknown. Tireless Tracker and Swamp was a heck of a draw, because that just lets us totally empty out our hand. We're super efficient. We make a clue, and then we get to cleanly tick the Lily up and get that Serum Visions out of their hands. So things are lining up quite well for us here. We'll set them down to 1 with a huge Tarmogoyf and see what they can muster. It's a Thought Scour, okay. Mills over a Gurmag Angler and a Snapcaster Mage. Those were 2 of their better draws, and even so, neither of those helps them stay alive here. So, end step will crack a clue. We find Fetch Land and Inquisition. While the Fetch Land is very, very nice with Tireless Tracker, we'll go ahead and Inquisition here. No reason not to. We've got mana abundance, and they have pretty much the best card they could have had in this situation, which is Snapcaster Mage. So they'll flash him in, target Fatal Push. Sure. We're going to go ahead and get our clue value here by fetching, letting our client catch up to us here. Then we edict away the Snapcaster and they just scoop. So the best they could manage there is push the Tarmogoyf, and we've still got 2 lethal attackers coming in. So absolutely dominant display here in Game 1 against Shadow. Our lilies off the top were perfect. They were perfect. We had a low interaction, high threat count hand. And that's actually pretty fine for the most part against Shadow. Like, if they curve out perfectly, you might be in trouble, but against like a normal Shadow progression, just having a lot of bodies is great. Like, all of our cards are really relevant there. All of our creatures are really relevant. And, of course, Lilianas of the Veil line up very, very well against them. So, yeah, that's kind of a textbook victory against Shadow. That's the type of stuff you want to be doing. You want to be presenting a lot of bodies. You want to be getting recurring value out of your Planeswalkers. And you want to eventually take over the game with some stuff like Tireless Tracker. So that's what happened, and let's take a quick look at the sideboarding. Okay, if you've watched my channel at all before, you've seen me sideboard against Shadow, and in fact we've done it a lot recently, so I'm going to make this one on the quicker side, but we have these triple Fulminator Mages, pretty good place to start. Kitchen Finks, Pulse, very, very good here. Liliana the Last Hope is excellent. Engineered Explosives and Nile Spellbomb are a little bit more in the second tier of cards to bring in, but we're going to get some number of them in, so all of those cards come in. So what I've been doing lately is actually leaving in exactly 1 discard spell in the form of Thoughtseize. The other 6, including Collective Brutality, come out. And this is not something that's set in stone either, but it's something I've been testing out. I really do like siding out most, if not all, discard, but that's a reasonable one to leave in. It's because I was on the draw here. I took out a Forest. I'll bring it back in on the play, but for the draw games, you take out the Forest, you bring in an Engineered Explosives, and it's just another answer card, basically. You're more likely to hit your land drops anyway when you're on the draw. And then finally, you know, both of these spell bombs are very playable. I like to just kind of find room for one more if I can, and I cut a Fatal Push for that because we don't want too many things that only kill Shadow and Snapcaster. So that's what my 60 looks like. Let's go to Game 2. Alright, my friends, Game 2 on the draw against Grixis Shadow, and our hand has a lot to like. All 3 of these forms of interaction are very good. However, you know, and we have a Field of Ruin, that's, I guess, a 4th form of good interaction, but it is a little heavy on the old land count. I'd like to have a higher density of action, especially with such a low mana curve. However, we don't like to mulligan against Shadow. It's a functional hand. It's got some sideboard tech. We're going to keep it. But worth noting, the density of spells is a little low, and our opponent is giving us the play. So this is something I wrote about in my Patreon-exclusive scouting report on Grixis Shadow. It's something that you know, maybe this is just anecdotal, but I personally didn't really see people doing this at all before. And then I wrote about it, and when I wrote that they're likely to do it, it was a It was some kind of fairly well-known Shadow player who had just 2 days before I wrote my guide said, hey, you should be taking the draw against BGX decks. And now everybody's doing it. Again, not because I wrote about it, but because the Shadow Pro wrote about it. So that's the type of thing that we try to bring you in the scouting reports. But in any case, the opponent goes Watery Grave into Inquisition, taking away our EE. So that's what we were afraid of, is facing down the discard when we have such a light spell count. Fatal Push, potentially a decent draw, but there have been plenty of games where I've died with pushes in hand against a big old Gurmag Angler, so we're going to want to be really vigilant about how big their graveyard is getting. We're going to probably crack our Nile Spellbomb aggressively, partially because Angler is the best card they could have now, and partially because we just need to hit more action, so we want to cantrip. Fortunately for us, they're doing just a lot of cantripping of their own this turn. It helps set up their plays, nothing wrong with that, but it lets us pretty cleanly cantrip on the end step here. We get a ton of value, getting 5 cards out of their graveyard, getting the redraw. Just fine with me. Just fine with me. So, third Fatal Push, sure. Well, we play the Field of Ruin there because we can maybe go Field into Fatal Push if they got a push target, or if we've just got nothing else going on, we can start fielding them out of the game, potentially. So whether or not they present an appealing field target, we'll have to see. Looks like they will. We want to hit the red lands in most circumstances, I would say. Ooh, Liliana of the Veil. That's a tough one, though. That's what we didn't want to see, is a Planeswalker in this window. So good old Lily's going to start running us out of resources. We'll pitch a Swamp there, because we're going to, get a Swamp here off our Field of Ruin. And we draw a Field of Ruin for turn. Okay, I mean, not good. Not good by any means, but at least it's something that we are able to do proactively. So here I set a stop on their draw step, and I decided to aggressively field, because we're pretty far behind now, potentially. This Liliana is just putting us pretty far behind, again, depending on what they can follow her up with. So I think at this point, instead of waiting for them to expose another red land, which it doesn't look like they'll probably need to anyway, we aggressively field looking for the highest possible upside. And the highest upside would be to just kind of Stone Rain them here because they drew their island for turn. However, they get to fetch the island, so that's not the case. Still, I think that was a fine play. And let's see what else they've got. Thoughtseize, well, you can choose push, push, or push, and then they're going to take up Lily. We need to find an answer to her real quick. We'll pitch our Forest, and a couple Fatal Pushes in hand. We draw Liliana of our own. I mean, at least it's something to do, but I almost was reluctant to play her here because, of course, we tick up, we lose a push, then they're going to tick up, we lose our last push, and then they have free reign. Like if they've been slow rolling a threat around our Fatal Pushes, they can just slam it. Now, granted, we can edict that threat away, but we've still got to deal with their Liliana, who's about to be at Alt Threshold. And they're going to lead on Thought Scour. Indeed, they'll tick her up. And indeed, they've been slow rolling that Shadow. So, they've got one card in hand, Lily on 6, Shadow on board. Come on, top of the deck. And the top of the deck pulls through with an Abrupt Decay. Abrupt Decay. Absolutely the perfect draw here, actually, because it even gets around, if that last card is Stubborn Denial, it even gets around that. So Abrupt Decay takes care of their Liliana just in time. Our Liliana edicts away the Shadow, and suddenly we're about even, because they've got a card in hand now too, but we've got a Liliana on too, so I'd call that pretty even. Alright, Jace Vryn's Prodigy, that's actually a card that could cause us some problems. They've got a nice big graveyard. If he transforms, he's going to start 2-for-1ing us every turn. Tireless Tracker, huh? Well, pretty good card in the matchup, and I felt obligated here to take care of the JVP before he flips. I suppose there wasn't a consideration for just playing Tracker than ticking Lily up, trying to outgrind the Jace, but I don't know. I guess better safe than sorry. Like, this card, you know, like for example, if they did flip and then they -3, that makes a bad draw, like a fetch land, into a good draw, because then they can get revolt, they can fatal push, you know, all that stuff. So I took the safe line, I think, there of edicting away the shadow, trusting that my tireless tracker is enough value to take over the game. Basically, either I'll draw lands and turn them into gas, or I will draw gas. And yeah, the land off the top, Hissing Quagmire, pretty good draw if you ask me. We could have cracked the clue there aggressively to get another point of damage across, and also in case we found like a 2-drop or a discard. Well, my discard spells are mostly out, but in case we found something we wanted to main phase. But the way they've been sequencing lately, I'm suspicious that they have a discard spell in hand. So I chose to not crack the clue. We're going to do it on their end step. And the opponent's got a Gurmag Angler. That's a good one. That's a good one indeed. So here comes our clue. And it was a Verdant Catacombs. Alright. Well, this is all pretty great for us. Verdant Catacombs, I chose to main phase it. It doesn't look like they could have much here to punish us except Dismember, which is a little risky for them to cast anyway. So main phase the clue. Main phase the fetch activation, rather. Get our 2 clues. What a beautiful thing. We're just going to try for the Lily. They might have Stubborn Denial, but I think we are supposed to just try for her. Sure enough, they've got the stub. Alright, fair enough. Fair enough. So here, I didn't see any reason to force the trade. Again, I can do the same thing. I can play around discard this way by just not cracking my clues yet. And I'm not under pressure. They're under pressure, right? So if I can crack 3 more total clues, which is not unreasonable, I can outsize the Angler. Or we can just draw a Maelstrom Pulse. That might work too. So first thing we're going to do is crack a clue here. Another Tireless Tracker. Alright, so we're going to try the Pulse. I'm a little worried about Snap into Stubborn Denial, but again, I think we're just supposed to make them have it. Alright, they have just the stub out of hand. That's fine. It's just a 1-for-1, so fine with me. Now, here, I think the best attack, the best course of action is actually to attack. It is actually to attack here because we're very far ahead now. We don't want to let them, like, snap Stubborn us out of the game if we draw another good non-creature spell. So the fact that we have 2 threats in hand and the mana to cast them made me want to trade with the Angler there. Now, they do have a discard spell, so I think our read was correct, and now we're down to 1 threat. And they have a Shadow. They're empty-handed, but with a Shadow. So, alright, couple good cards they had there, and relative to what we were doing. Liliana the Last Hope, though, our top deck is providing very well for us. I think I'd slightly prefer Lily of the Veil here, just the clean Edict would be great. But we're going to roll her down. We know that the floor for this play is getting back a tracker, but we see that we mill over at Kitchen Finks. And that's what I'm going to take. The Finks is awesome here. The Finks does everything. It blocks well against Shadow. It can attack well into Shadow alongside another thing or two. So Finks is just a great 2-for-1 in this particular spot. They drew a land, not very good, and we are just ripping more and more gas off the top. So, you know, there might have been some consideration for a really aggressive Quagmire plus Finks attack if we didn't have anything else to do here. But it is clearly correct to just play out our threats. We've got Skoos, we've got Fulminator, all kinds of value on the field, and we'll pass. Like there's nothing they can really have here to beat us. And the opponent just scoops it up. So yeah, that is how you do it against Shadow. We had we got a little bit worried early on when we lost our EE, and we were kind of a little bit flooded on lands, a lot flooded on fatal pushes, and then that Liliana the Veil almost got out of control. She got a ton of value, but right when we needed it, we ripped the Abrupt Decay off the top, we turned the tides, and our Liliana was still around after edicting away a Shadow, so from there, you know, we outground them. We outground them. They had a lot of good plays too, but we just had a little bit more grinding power. By the end, we were in the firm driver's seat. So anyway, great start to the league. Great start to the league. Our opponent was chatting us up this game, and you know, feel bad for him because you said he was at 2-2, playing to go positive, playing to cash the league, and we denied him that. But we've got to cash our leagues too, right? So there can be only one, and opponent was a nice guy, so he said I kind of nut drew him. It's kind of true. We kind of had the nut draw, some very good draws anyway. So good games, well played to the opponent, and let's move on to round 2. Alright, my friends, here we are for round 2 of this competitive league, and our opponent on the play will mulligan, and we've kind of got a similar hand to the one we saw in game 1 of round 1, where it's just all threats without much interaction, the only interaction coming from the land base, but it's a strong hand, it's got a little bit of everything, all the variety that our 2-drop creatures can offer. So the opponent likes their 6. It's going to be a Windswept Heath fetching a Breeding Pool into Mausoleum Wanderer, so this is very clearly Bant Spirits. And, it's a matchup that kind of, a lot of people seem to struggle with, and we'll see how we do here. Thoughtseizes is a great draw, and lets us go Swamp into Thoughtseize, which I think is better than playing out our Quagmire there. And we see, it's a light hand. They were on the play and they mulled, so Mausoleum Wanderer, Supreme Phantom. Well, I think the clear take is Phantom because it's got it's got the Anthem effect, and it is, we're not as good as Mausoleum Wanderer is, and it is a fantastic 1-drop. We don't have any instants and sorceries for it to blow out anyway, so pretty clearly just take the Phantom and pass. Here comes that other Wanderer. And the Flooded Strand. Yep, you got it. Alright, we take 2, and then we draw Blooming Marsh. Alright, lands are not the worst here. So, very interesting question as to what creature to play. And in the end, I opted for the Tarmogoyf, because the Tarmogoyf is just the biggest clock. As far as we know, they don't have any other gas in hand, and should be able to outrace them. Basically, my thinking here was I'm very far ahead. I'm very far ahead just purely on the fact of the mulligan. On being on the draw, I'm very far ahead on resources with that, with the mulligan, and with them having kind of a 3-land hand. It's not like they're just pure gas, right? So I was like, thinking the most likely way I'm going to lose this game is if my Bob triggers just absolutely destroy me, right? So plus, Bob can get ambushed by a Spell Queller, so on and so forth. I think playing Tarmogoyf there is correct. So we just get hit for 2. And speaking of ambushed by a Spell Queller, they just make a land drop and pass. So we are a little bit suspicious for that, but, since we've got only creatures in hand anyway, it's might be correct to just play stuff out. So we're going to play out the Skoos. Again, similar logic, playing Skoos over Bob. And the Skoos resolves, okay. You always feel like the Spell Queller is coming, but again, they didn't have much left in hand, so who knows. They do make their 4th land drop. They've got Horizon Canopy, and wouldn't you know it, they found a Collected Company, so this is their big catch-up card. Let's see what they find. They find double Reflector Mage, so this is absolutely backbreaking. This punishes us so hard for playing the way we did. Everything we were doing is, I think, was the correct decision, but now we get both of our green threats bounced, and that's very bad, and all of a sudden they've got, instead of a board state of 2 versus 2, it's 4 versus 0, and we cannot redeploy Tarmogoyf or Scavenging Ooze next turn. And we're already down to 12. And we draw Blooming Marsh for turn, so we just can't really draw any interaction to save our lives. So I think Tireless Tracker into Blooming Marsh is the best we can really manage here. We're certainly planning to trade away the Tracker with a Reflector Mage here if possible. Ether Vial, okay, not a card we care about. Drogskull Captain is, though. That's going to do very bad things to us. It's going to make the Mausoleum Wanderers 3/3s until end of turn, and then 2/2s from there out, so all of a sudden their clock is real. And yeah, sure enough, we do have to trade away the Tracker, but Liliana the Veil, okay, so that's finally a form of interaction, but it's not targeted. If we play her and Edict her, they're just going to sack the Reflector Mage, so we're dead there. And if we play Scavenging Ooze, and eat 2 creatures, we are taking exactly lethal in the air. If we had a third, if this swamp was a forest basically, or if this field of ruin was a forest, we could play the Skoos, eat 3 things, and then plan to be at 1. Of course, blocking the Reflector Mage along the ground if they don't draw any spirits for turn. However, that's not live either, so we're pretty much just dead, but, I guess nothing in our hand does it, so we'll crack a clue, and we find a forest, so we just scoop it up. Now, man, if that doesn't show you the power of Collected Company, I don't know what will. We were so far ahead, it was unbelievable. There were very few things that could beat us. Even some, really good, just spirits off the top, just gas, was very unlikely to outrace us. With Goyf, with Scavenging Ooze, with Tireless Tracker to follow it up. After, considering how far ahead we were. But that Collected Company, not only a 2-for-1, but find the card selection to find double Reflector Mage. I really think even 1 Reflector Mage would have been manageable, but double Reflector Mage, that was just brutal, guys. That was just brutal. So, it feels like we had defeat, victory within our grasp, but defeat was our fate. So what can you do but go to the side and figure out how to improve in Game 2? Alright, my friends, here we are. Sideboarding against Bant Spirits, and we want all of this great removal that we're used to bringing in. Maelstrom Pulse is good, Liliana the Last Hope is very good in some windows, Deathmark is great. Collective Brutality is definitely good. Some windows it's a good kill spell, some windows it's good to take a card out of their hand, and the Drain Life has relevance as well. So this is a card that it's a little, each mode individually is high variance, but all together you're always going to find a pretty good use for it, I would say. Languish comes in, Engineered Explosives comes in, and I like Grafdigger's Cage as well to shut off Collected Company, especially. And I don't think there's anything else here that we're really that interested in. So let's just say we'll bring in all these 7. Especially important, Grafdigger's Cage to shut off Coco because we're going to side out our Thoughtseizes. You saw how crazily quickly they can pressure our life total with how evasive they are, how quickly they can catch up with Coco, even when they were pretty far behind. So in my opinion, as good as it is to take away a Collected Company with a Thoughtseize, with any discard spell really, we cannot afford the life loss there. So, out comes Thoughtseize, out comes Nihil Spellbomb, doesn't really accomplish much. What else don't we like? What else don't we like against Bant Spirits? Well, everything else that we still have in here is reasonable. But for Liliana, the Veil is a little excessive. So, I think we can cut at least 1. We're on the play, so maybe we want to keep 3, but we could consider cutting a second one, especially if there's a Game 3 on the draw, so that's definitely a consideration. Other than that, Tireless Tracker is a little bit slow, and I personally don't hate siding out a 4th discard spell either. So, in my opinion, making a cut from any of these 3 is totally fine. If you're really, really respecting their life total as well, you could side out a Bob on the draw. But we're on the play, we're going to keep in our Lilies and our Bob, so I think on the play, I would side these 2 things out, a Tracker and an Inquisition. And then on the draw, I might bring both back in and cut a Lily of the Veil and a Dark Confidant. Or you leave the Bob in and cut, leave one of these other cards back out. So you can approach the fringes of this matchup a few different ways. But for this specific game that you're about to see, where are we? I've got myself confused. There we go. For this specific game that you're about to see, this was my setup. So let's go to Game 2 and see how it went. And here we are, my friends, Game 2 on the play against Bant Spirits, and we've got an unplayable 7. We've got them all. We've got them all. And, our opponent had them all last game, and they still kind of crushed us, actually, so maybe we've still got some hope. But they're going to keep 7 this time. Not what we want to see. This hand's fine. It needs a little help. So I see the Scavenging Ooze on top. That's kind of a card I'm indifferent to. We probably want to bottom it for a land anyway. So what I did is just put it on the bottom and then ran out my fetch land here. And if for some reason I decide to, that I don't want to crack the fetch land. We've got a fresh draw, but I'm probably just going to crack the fetch land to preserve my life total and get the dual land we desperately need. So sure enough, the opponent plays a fetch and passes. We get our Overgrown Tomb, and we don't draw a land, so right now we're just kind of windmill slamming this Dark Confidant. Definitely the best play here. We desperately need to hit that third land drop next turn, so we hope the Confidant lives, and we hope he does well by us. Well, alright, they've got a Hallowed Fountain on the end step into Path to Exile, so sure, I mean, I'm not exactly happy that my Bob got answered, but at the same time, there's our third land, you know? There's our third land, so definitely alright with that. And I'm even more alright with this. They tap out for a Spirit, which is exactly what I wanted them to do here, because then we just get to Edict something away very cleanly, have a mana-efficient turn, and there it goes. And we've got another Lily of the Veil in hand now. Would not have minded a fourth land there, so we could start really pulling ahead on board, but they play a Moorland Haunt. That's actually a card that I really didn't want to see, because this is very, very good against our removal-heavy progression, and specifically against Liliana of the Veil. So that was actually a great, great card for them. But let's take up the Liliana first, see what happens. Knowing the power of Moorland Haunt against Liliana, and knowing the power of all these other cards in my hand, I chose to pitch the Liliana. It was either that or maybe the Blooming Marsh, but I think we want 4 lands to operate this game. So I pitched the second Lily, and I played the Blooming Marsh and just passed. Couple of reasons I did that. Number one, I really want to Field of Ruin this thing away as soon as possible, but I don't want to do it this turn because then they can float colorless, go get a forest, and Collected Company if they have that. Number two, they're representing Spell Queller, so I don't really want to jam the Tarmogoyf into a Queller. We might be able to handle it with Revolt from Field of Ruin into Push, but not something I really want to walk into. So I was pretty happy here to just pass. And yep, on the end step, they're going to make a Spirit. And they'll pass back to us. So I didn't need to hit the Moorland Haunt there, because right now there's no other Spirit to exile, so they can't get any more value out of it quite yet. Selfless Spirit is the play. Alright. Then they've got a fourth land drop, they're fetching. Looks like they've got something else to follow it up. Supreme Phantom, huh? Well, alright. You got it. We couldn't really have done much in response to that, you know. This thing's attacking either way, and it is coming at the Liliana. So here, what are my options? Well, I can push the Supreme Phantom, but then they're going to sack Selfless Spirit and my Lily just dies. I can push the Selfless Spirit, but then they're just going to, again, sack it, and nothing really happens. Or I can push the token. Now, if I push the token, maybe they're like, I don't want to really spend my Selfless Spirit to just save a token. It's totally fine. I'll just let my token trade with their Fatal Push. That's good for me. But if that happens, then I get to untap. Collective Brutality takes care of Selfless Spirit. Liliana Edict takes care of Supreme Phantom. I can clear the board out at the cost of clearing my own board out. So that's my plan. And I'm going to Field of Ruin first, because that's definitely great here. We want to take care of the Moorland Haunt before we put anything else into the graveyard and while they're tapped out. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with this plan, and we have to see what they do here when I push their token. So indeed they are going to sack their Selfless Spirit, so sure, they get to take care of my Liliana. And they get a forest. They've got a Noble Hierarch. Alright, so only one card left in hand. Noble Hierarch is not the scariest. And we have a Liliana the Last Hope. Oh boy. Okay, so powerful card, but unfortunately we cannot have her plus another spell, because that I would snap do that. But so option number one is to play Lily the Last Hope, take up, kill the Noble Hierarch. Then they might not be able to kill her on the crackback, but if they have another Lord, they certainly will. So my thinking here was like, it's pretty even overall. It's 3-0 on board, but we have card advantage. We have some powerful cards. I want to maneuver myself into a position where she completely takes over the game. So Maybe that's a little greedy, maybe that's a little unrealistic, but Tarmogoyf is a 4/5, and we are actually ahead on the life totals right now. So for that reason, I just went ahead and killed that 2/2 token with Collective Brutality, then played a Tarmogoyf, who's actually now a 5/6. So we'll see how it all works out for us, but the fact that they're attacking, they've got the Exalted trigger, sure enough, I'll take 2. And of course, we're a little bit worried about Collected Company since they just pass here. Scavenging is, huh? Well, I'm worried about Company, I'm worried about Queller, I'm worried about Company finding Queller. There's a lot they could have here. There's a lot they could have. So I think what I should do first is just get in with the Goyf, see what they do. If we connect for 5, that's alright. And if he draws out something else, that's alright. But nope, just connecting for 5. So I dithered and dirtled about this decision, but I just, in the end, decided to jam the Ooze, thinking that, you know, it's pretty good if it resolves in terms of racing them, and if not, you know, if it gets spell-quellered, well, better that than getting my Liliana spell-quellered, probably. So, it was a tough call. It was a tough call. And it was not very mana efficient. Like, if they had Queller, that made my turn the least mana efficient possible. So, what can you do? Drogskull Captain, yeah, that's a very good one. Now they've got 2 Anthem effects, now their Queller is hexproof. So, here they go again with that evasive clock, turning the corner very quickly, hitting me for 6 in the sky. Not good. And Collective Brutality is my draw. Oh, that hurts. That hurts because it's just not enough to kill the Drogskull Captain thanks to this Supreme Phantom Anthem. Can't target any other spirit, so all we could really do with it is kill the Noble Hierarch. But if we're just going to use it to kill the Noble Hierarch, we might as well use our Lily the Last Hope. My dreams of maneuvering into a position where she takes over the game have died. That is not something that's going to happen. So we've just got to crash in for 5, put them to 4, and then hope they can't kill us. So they've got 9 power on board right now. Basically, we're dead to another Spirit Lord. And they have not only another Spirit Lord, but the much hated by any interactive player Drogskull Captain Hexproof lock. So that is just pretty brutal, guys. I think they had a very good draw this game. They had a very good progression this game. And there's nothing much, as far as I can tell, that we could have done differently about it. I think we made the right call with, like, the Field of Ruin and Fatal Push decisions, all things like that. Maybe we could have just tried to force the Liliana earlier, but against other progressions, what we did would have worked out perfectly. So let me know what you think about that, but feels bad to lose to the Spirits so soundly after we looked like we were in a pretty good position game 1, for sure. And then here in game 2, it seemed like we were in it until they just kept finding lords off the top, and sometimes that, you know, just the old kitchen table style, you know, play out your lords, your +1/+1 to all members of my tribe. Sometimes that just gets it done. So, yeah, Dance Spirits. I see why some of you guys are playing Raking Canopy. You know, like this deck is definitely a bit of a rough one for us. I guess I was just having good luck, but I was like 8-2 against this deck the first 10 times or so I played it. I was like, huh, you know, our interaction lines up really well, and in many ways it does, but they've got a lot of gas in certain windows. You know, Collective Brutality here just didn't cut it against that 3/3 Drogskull. So anyway, you know, tough luck, tough breaks here, but the Spirits player played well and they took us down, so we fall to 1-1. No 5-0 for us, but let's keep playing, and we'll see you for round 3. Alright, everybody, round 3, and for the 3rd straight game 1 in this league, we've got a hand with only threats in it. No non-creature spells, but we're going to keep it just like we did the first 2 times. And, you know, on the play, turn 2 Dark Confidant looking pretty good to me. We'll have to see what we're against. It's an Inquisition deck, and there goes Tireless Tracker. Okay, so that means they probably have an answer for the Dark Confidant. Drawing a forest there is very bad in light of the, you know, what we just surmised. But hey, you gotta play them, gotta run them out. There's no question. Fatal Push, Bloodstained Mire, pass. So looking like, you know, maybe Mardu, maybe Jund. hard to tell, but either way, Scavenging Ooze is the only play because we're drew yet another basic land. So bad for us. So our draws are not complying particularly well with us. Looks like some kind of a grindy match, and they have another Fatal Push. So all of a sudden, you know, we'll eat a Confidant in response. We'll gain a life. That's really all we can do. And since it's Overgrown too, we know it's Jund now. So we're against Jund. It's turn 3, and we have no spells. We have no board and no spells. So good times. They've got a Tarmogoyf, they've got a Blood Cryptet, and they will pass. And we draw yet another land. So things are looking a little bit grim for the Grim Flayer. However, we're gonna stick it out. We're gonna keep playing. They go Black Cleave Cliffs. No Bloodbraid Elf, so that's good for us. And they hit us for 4 with a Goyf. All right, Fatal Push. That's a reasonable draw. So let's fire up the Treetop Village here. They didn't play to the board, so they might well have interaction for it. But you know, we're pretty happy to have a mana efficient turn any way we can get it here. And this is a pretty decent turn all around if they don't have a kill spell. And they don't have a kill spell. All right, I mean, I'm going to take it. We'll run out our fetch land there, just in case we decide we're at the point where we want to start thinning out our deck, basically. And they're going to crash in with a Goyf. We're going to Fatal Push them. All right, mission accomplished. Opponent will fetch. They're on land number 5 as well, so for all we know, they could be just about as flooded as we are, but not quite as flooded because they've got a really nice 2-for-1. They buy back the Goyf, they make us discard. The only consolation here is that we don't have anything good in our hand anyway, so sure, we pitch a Swamp. So they replay that Goyf. Alright, we're back on the ropes here. We draw a Tarmogoyf of our own. Well, that's a decent draw, potentially. So for all the usual reasons you've heard me mention a million times on this channel, we sandbag our land. It's good with Liliana, it's good with Collective Brutality, it's really good with Tireless Tracker, and because we're against Jund, it could bait out a discard spell as well. They found an Abrupt Decay for our Tarmogoyf. Well, you got it. The funny thing is, after all this flooding, we're not that far behind. Again, the opponent's flooding too, they're on 6 lands, and you know, this Tarmogoyf attack just puts us even on life totals. So, Tireless Tracker off the top. Now that is a draw. That's what I like to see. So we weren't having any joy at all, but all of a sudden everything gets turned around with the presence of the old Tireless Tracker. Now, they could have a piece of removal here, but I judged it was unlikely that they did. So we went ahead and fetched main phase. And sure enough, we were rewarded for it. We get our second clue without getting blown out by a removal spell in a response to the fetch land activation. Now, I could have fired up Treetop Village and attacked, and I almost did. But I actually thought it was more important to hold up the clue, because we have a ton of outs to a Tarmogoyf in this deck, and I really just want to pull ahead on board. I don't want to try to race Jund in this spot, because they have Lightning Bolts, they have Bloodbraid Elves, it could go very badly. So I chose that it was better to hold up clue. We can even crack a clue when the Tarmogoyf attacks, hoping to draw Fatal Push. It's a little risky, because it could punish us if they have discard, and we don't have the push, right? But I went for it. And it's a Collective Brutality, okay? So I'm not going to chump block with my Tireless Tracker just yet. And they have a Black Cleave Cliff, so they're officially flooded as well. And still just 1 card in hand, we draw a Tarmogoyf. Well, that's a pretty good draw. So let's crack a clue first. See what we find. Another Tireless Tracker. All right. Here for once I wanted to draw a land, but hey, what can you do? Pretty happy to just crash in with the 5/4 tracker here. And there's no real efficient way mana-wise to play Goyf and Tracker. Can't be done. Goyf plus Treetop couldn't have been done, and we have to play the Goyf. So I just said, hey, let's drain you for 2. Let's just use that Collective Brutality now. We're going to drain you for 2 and play our Tarmogoyf. This puts them, dead to any 2 of our 3 threats getting through, if you count Treetop Village. Opponent's just going to pass it back. Maelstrom Pulse. Guys, remember, don't pulse the opposing Goyfs if they're on your side of the table as well. That's not good. That's not a good play. So let's just fire up the Treetop Village and see if they've got anything. So this is bad against Fatal Push exactly, or like Abrupt Decay or Assassin's Trophy, but like a non-bolt removal. Because if they have Bolt for a Treetop Village, whatever. Don't really care. But if they have like Fatal Push for Tarmogoyf, then they can block the Treetop Village, then they can go to 1, they're still technically in the game, right? And, but then that turns on our Maelstrom Pulse at least, so it's the most proactive thing to do. We've got the consolation prize of being able to pulse the Goyf here if they blow us out, and if something unforeseen happens, we can just play our second tracker as a Balduvian Barbarians in the second main. So I fired up the Treetop Village, said, let's just go for it. Do you have anything? Let's see what you've got. And the opponent has the concede match button, or the concede game button. So, all right, good enough for me. We flooded horribly. We got our stuff answered early on with Inquisition and double Fatal Push in the first 2 turns, or 3 turns, and then we just flooded and flooded and flooded. But somewhere near the end of all that flooding, we found this beauty. We found the Tireless Tracker, and because our opponent was flooding almost as badly as we were, the Tireless Tracker ended up being the Mirror Breaker, so that was sweet. Big fan of that, and feels good to win a game that felt unwinnable and at one point. So let's go to the sideboard, see what we do against Jund. Alright, my friends, against Jund, we want all of our stuff with 2-for-1 potential. So that would be Kitchen Finks, that would be Liliana, that would be Nissa, that would be Maelstrom Pulse, that would be Languish, Engineered Explosives. Oh, Languish is actually a bit more of a maybe board card, perhaps. We didn't see Dark Confidant, so keep that in mind. There are some strange Jund decks that don't necessarily play Confidant. We also didn't see Bloodbraid Elf either, so if you know they're on a traditional Jund deck, you see the Bob, you see the Bloodbraid, Languish will kill most of their stuff. Probably worth bringing in. But, you know, in this particular match, I actually don't know if I brought it in, so let's call that a maybe board card. I do like Deathmark against BGX decks. It obviously doesn't hit Confidants, but it takes care of most of the other stuff you care about. And what else? So Fulminator Mages are great here for sure. Nile Spellbombs are probably a maybe board card. They're fine. They're pretty good, in fact, but it's just kind of a matter of, do we have room for them? We already have a whole lot to bring in. So what don't we like? Let's say we're just going to straight up bring in all 9 of these cards. Well, let's take a look. I personally am somebody who cuts away all discard all the time against BGX mirrors, no exceptions, and Collective Brutality is not the worst, but that can go too. We've just got better things to do. This is also definitely a matchup where you can cut away a land and increase your threat density, because remember, in mid-range mirrors, we want threats and answers. We don't want to flood, and we don't want to have dead top decks like Thoughtseize, so late in the game. So against Jund, we will cut away a basic land, because they're not going to tax our basics much. So we can cut a forest. Then we've got to make one more cut, and you know, as good as she is, especially on the draw, I think it's pretty fine to cut away 1 Lily of the Veil, go down to 3, because we just have so much else to do. Otherwise, like, literally every card we have left in the deck is good. If you rate it highly enough, you could bring in a Languish, perhaps over a second Lily of the Veil, but I probably would lean against that and just say that this 60 is really good. Again, we would love to play another Spellbomb. 3 is excessive, but 2 would be a pretty good sweet spot in my opinion, but we just simply don't have the slots as far as I can tell. If anyone has any alternative suggestions for this, please feel free to let me know. But in the meantime, this is what I ran with, and that's what it looks like. So let's go ahead and go to Game 2, see what happened. Here we are for Game 2 against Jund, and our opponent has kept 7. We will keep 7 as well. It's going to be a slugfest. We need a 3rd land to make this hand great, but it's pretty strong. It's really well-rounded. It's got a lot to like. A little bit of everything, to be honest, and you know, Fatal Push is a good draw, but it's not land number 3. It's alright, we still got 2 more chances to hit it before it becomes an issue. Opponent's got the Overgrown Tomb for their end step, and Blackcleave Cliffs on turn 2 into Confidant. Well, he's going to get pushed, and then it's going to go to us. Tireless Tracker, yet another good card, but not one that is a third land. So here I think there is no choice but to play our Dark Confidant. I am sometimes leery about playing out any 2-drop creature when we're on the draw in a BGX mirror on curve, because you can walk them right into a Liliana of the Veil. But here, since we haven't hit our third land, I don't think we had any choice. Like, if we had a third land in hand, maybe we could say, yeah, we'll just play a land, we'll pass, we'll hold up Fatal Push, and then we'll play our Liliana next turn. But nope, we've got to run out our Bob here. And they've got a Liliana, sure enough, so very, very unfortunate, but that's just kind of what we had to do. We had to take the high-risk, high-reward play. Assassin's Trophy. Well, it's not time to push the panic button quite yet and trophy away the Lily Ramp them this early, because we can play the Skoos, and, you know, maybe the Skoos can pressure her off the board, but no third land yet is still very rough. They've got Raging Ravine, they're going to tick Liliana up, and here I chose to pitch Maelstrom Pulse, and this is why. So, we're going to answer her next turn one way or another. If our Skoos doesn't get through, we're definitely gonna have to kill the Liliana. Assassin's Trophy is the way to do it right now. The Pulse doesn't do it until we draw our third land. Tireless Tracker is our best catch-up card. Liliana is our best, like, all-around value card. Fatal Push is, again, castable and very, very good right now. So I think Pulse is awesome. Awesome card, but definitely the one that, the only one I could really afford to pitch. They ditch a Tarmogoyf, so I don't feel too bad about that. But then they have Decay for our Skoos, so we draw Confidant. Alright, I mean, we've just got to trophy the Lily. We've just got to give them a land. They're on 5 lands, we're on 2. Feels bad. And they've got Raging Ravine, so we're going to get punished for this, but no other choice. They've got a Skoos, and they've got another Skoos, so I immediately regret pitching my Maelstrom Pulse. That would have been our real catch-up card, guys. That would have been the real catch-up card, but it was not to be, and I think it was the correct decision at the time. Of course, we were not to know that they would have 2 Skooses, and then that we would finally draw a land on turn 5 after 5 attempts at it. We finally got there, so we make our third land drop. Could have gone a couple different ways here. I almost went Liliana Edict, but then I said, no, we need to catch up, so we'll play the Dark Confidant. We'll hold up Fatal Push. If they go all in on a Skoos, we can push one of them, and then they just had everything. They just had a Bolt for the Bob, so we are punished yet again for what I think is the correct decision, but that's kind of how these mirrors go, you know? It just comes down to the draws. We had the luck of the Tireless Tracker at the right time in Game 1, and now they've got a whole lot going on here Game 2. I chose to push the Raging Ravine. I actually don't know if that's correct. Maybe I was supposed to push a Skoos here and force them to keep investing mana into the Ravine instead of their Skooses. I don't know. But I was like, alright, I've got a Liliana Edict for a Skoos. I don't want to get to the point where, like, we trade everything away and I'm just losing to the Raging Ravine. So, you could definitely see either a merit in either one of those. And here, you know, we've just got to catch up. So I went Tracker into Swamp, planning hopefully next turn to go Liliana into Fatal Push, basically. That would be the best top deck, but right now we have to get hit for a big chunk exchange by these Skooses. So they're going to gobble up a bunch of stuff, and they've got a Lightning Bolt too, so they just keep ripping one mana removal. Very, very bad for us when we're on the back foot like this. But Fulminator Mage, okay, you know, it's not a dead draw or anything, but it's not particularly exciting here. I think we clearly just have to Edict away a Skoos, plan to die to the other one, and you know, as it turns out, that actually was technically the wrong play, because they just have lethal here. I didn't, you know, I could have played the Fulminator Mage, chump blocked the bigger Skoos, whatever. We're just dead here. We're so far behind. We just have to hope they don't see it, basically, that they have lethal. or that we hope that they want to hedge a little bit against a potential fatal push in hand, but rightfully so, they go all in, they get Xaxes, they kill us with a 7/7 ooze. Man, that was rough. That was rough. So, you know, I was going to say not much we could have done, but, you know, maybe there was something we could have done. Maybe if we pushed a Skoos instead of the Raging Ravine, you know, things could have been a little bit different. But we didn't, and we were pretty thoroughly punished for, I think, what were definitely the correct decisions early on, based on, you know, what our opponent had. So sometimes you just can't have it all, and the opponent definitely buried us pretty well here. But that's alright. I feel like we're 50-50 or maybe even a little bit better, depending on the opponent's build in these matchups, especially post-side. So let's head over to Game 3, see what we can do against Jund. Alright, my friends, Game 3, and once again, we're going to be biting our nails hoping to draw a third land, way more so than in the last game, by the way. This is third land or bust. This really is, but look at the raw power of this hand. We've got double Fulminator Mage and Liliana of the Veil all on the play. All of these cards can be backbreaking, especially on the play. We've got a turn 2 Tarmogoyf, and we've got the late game value of Tireless Tracker. We've got it all. We've got it all. We just need to draw the third land, and we'll see how it goes. But Swamp Pass, we've got no utility out of our land base. That's one thing we don't have, just a couple basics. Blackcleave Cliffs Inquisition, and here I was just like, come on, guy, because, you know, I felt punished for some of my what I think are decent decisions last game. And then here, this is just a thing that personally tilts me. I really don't think it's correct to leave in any discard in the BGX mirrors. You know, our opponent last game was ripping Lightning Bolts and Scavenging Oozes when they could have been ripping discard. That's why you don't leave discard in the mid-range mirror, in my opinion. However, they're rewarded for doing so because they open on it, where it's, of course, very good. So, sure enough, and you know, this is no offense to the opponent, this is not attack at the opponent. In fact, a majority of my opponents seem to leave some discard in. Maybe they just don't have enough for the matchup when they're on these 3-colored decks. Maybe they don't have enough to bring out. So, I'm definitely breathing a sigh of relief to see that third land. I don't have the Liliana of the Veil anymore, so that's a little bit rough, but we still have Tarmogoyf into Fulminator Mage and to maybe a turn 4 Tireless Tracker that we're trying to line up. But the opponent has another Inquisition, and now I'm back to being tilted. Just can't believe it when I see it, but it happens. It happens, so anyway, there goes a Fulminator Mage. Very interesting. Really expected to see the Tireless Tracker go, so that makes me think they might not exactly be flush with lands themselves. So we're going to have to see what we draw, and of course it's just a swamp, nothing very good, but, you know, it lets us at least hold our fetch land in hand for the next Tireless Tracker, next turn's Tireless Tracker, if we don't get that Inquisitioned away, and, yeah, so it's definitely attack with the Tarmogoyf, definitely play the swamp, definitely play the Fulminator Mage, all of that is clear. What is unclear is whether we should aggressively Stone Rain right here and right now, and I chose to. A good reason not to do that is to have another body around, you know, to play around Edict effects, but we're already playing around an Edict effect by just taking them down to 1 land, and then next turn they'll only have 2 at the most. So, obviously you could go either way with that. There's a lot of merit to keeping the Fulminator around, using it as a Grey Ogre until the time comes to sack it, but, you know, and a red land is not a bad land to hit. A red-black land specifically, you know. It's not clear that they're going to have double black, not clear that they're going to have exactly what they need, and they just have Raging Ravine and Pass. So that's very, very nice for us, and we get to live the dream of Tireless Tracker into fetch land, and we have a Kitchen Finks in hand, which is a nice draw. So here, I'm hitting them for 4 now, and we're starting to pressure their life total, right? And I realize this, and because we are pressuring their life total, I think they're going to fetch this turn, either to push the Goyf or to just get a dual land as painlessly as possible. So that's why I didn't immediately crack my fetch. And we're waiting for them to crack their fetch. As soon as they do, we respond. Now we are guaranteeing we get our second clue, which is absolutely huge. And now they can do whatever they want, but we've pulled pretty well ahead with these couple clues. or I guess I should say we've pulled back to parity. Very, very minor misplay from the opponent here. They just, while we're still in declare blockers, they bolted the tracker, which actually grew our Goif by +1/+1. Very minor thing, easy to overlook, totally understandable, but worth pointing out just for the edification of you, the viewer. Opponent's going to grab a Swamp. I fear a Liliana of the Veil here, but it's only a Maelstrom Pulse. Still a fine play for them, but it's also fine with me. I just don't want to get 2 for 1 at this point. And we draw a Forest. Doesn't look very impressive, but that's actually kind of a fine draw because it lets us play the Kitchen Finks. And just like we've been doing, we're going to be really cagey with our clues. We're going to hold them up, play around discard effects as much as possible. So, Kitchen Finks is a heck of a card at this stage of the game, and they have a Dark Confidant, which is a little bit worse now that they are on the back foot, and that's not a card I'm particularly frightened of right now. So we're going to crack our clue and then take our draw step, and we have Lily and Scavenging Ooze, so now things are really turning the corner for us. We're about to have a wonderful turn. Wonderful, wonderful turn. You could have argued for attacking first with the Finks, seeing if they take the block, but I'm pretty happy to just Lily, Edict away the Confidant, and then, you know, I have my 3 power getting in, which is crucial. We are the aggro here. We want to pressure their life total before they can find a catch-up card like Bloodbraid Elf. And, you know, it's a fine value play anyway. We get to do everything this way. And the Finks is still around as a 2 for 1. You know, they still have to kill it twice, basically. So they have a Wooded Foothills. They have a Kolagan's Command. Let's see what they did here. Oh, I remember what they did. They bought back their Dark Confidant, which is technically a 2 for 1, but not a very appealing one, because playing the Bob here does not feel good, especially because they would have to fetch and shock at this point to do so. Probably not the best bet. So they get to kill the Skoos, which is very good for them, and then they get to buy back the Bob, who at this point is basically just a free pitch to Liliana that they don't want to play anyway. But they've got bigger problems than what to pitch to Liliana, like not dying in 2 hits to this Kitchen Finks. So we'll come across for 3, put them down to 2, and here, you know, a couple different lines you could take. You could trophy the Ravine first, get that out of there, and then tick the Liliana up. Or you could try to see what you draw off the clue, and I chose to do the latter. It's the clue. So here, you know, this is one reason I chose to crack the clue, because as much as it's fine to just empty out your hand and have a totally asymmetrical discard effect from Liliana, it's also fine if you don't really need the land, you can pitch it. So I chose to just be really, really conservative here, really, really careful. We're going to pitch the land. It's not asymmetrical, but it's not that bad either. In this way, we get to hold up trophy. We get to hold up trophy, and I think that's potentially pretty important. So they fetch, they're down to 1. They're down to 1, they've got Raging Ravine, 2 cards in hand, what's it going to be? Tarmogoyf? Alright. Looks good, but this is why we kept our Assassin's Trophy, so I'm quite rewarded for that line. We're going to go ahead and trophy away the Goyf. And opponent, you know, they're at 1. We'll have to see if they've got anything. We draw Assassin's Trophy for turn. Well, let's attack first with this Kitchen Finks and see what happens. See if they just die to it. Opponent's got to play. Pulse of Marasa. Very, very spicy. Return target creature or land card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life. I like this in the burn meta, because gain 6 life in the burn meta, gain 6 life in the aggro meta, and of course, it's a really nice 2 for 1 basically against the BGX mirrors. So that's a pretty cool piece of tech. I don't hate that at all. And they get to just kind of stay in the game. But here's the problem for them, is we've got a really good turn too. So we also, we still hit them for 3. Now we'll trophy away the Raging Ravine, take care of that manland. And they don't have a 4th basic in the deck. More importantly, we get to take the Lily up, get that Tarmogoyf right back in the graveyard where it belongs. Opponent plays a land, a fetch land at that, not very good. So we draw yet more gas. There is really no way we can lose now. So we play out the Ooze, we take the Lily up. She's at 4. Kitchen Finks, even a Damnation here, our Finks just lives through it. Or it persists rather to kill them the following turn. So as far as I can tell, there's nothing they can have, and indeed they take their draw step, they scoop it up. So that was a hard-fought BGX mirror, as they often are, often very grindy, often come down to frankly who draws better, but you still have to navigate it really well to get yourself in a position to outdraw the opponent. And there was a lot of little windows in all three games where both players were finding some really great stuff and some really not so great stuff. So definitely showed the full spectrum of what can happen in these BGX mirrors, and the Rock comes out on top. So Golgari Midrange taking down Jund. We advanced to 2-1 in the league. Feels good. I hope you're enjoying this league so far, and I will see you for round 4. Okay, my friends, we're on the play this time, and we have yet another kind of like blah opening 7. We've had a lot of Game 1 underwhelming Game 1 hands. Where is our discard, Where are our Planeswalkers in these Game 1 hands? Nope, it's just kind of like a bunch of threats, and either no interaction or interaction that's not great in the early game. But whatever, it's a functional hand. We don't know what we need, so we keep functional hands. Our opponent's going to mulligan to 6, then they're going to stay there. So, sure. Hasten Quagmire, pass to you. Opponent moves to their second main phase just to make us think they kept a no-lander, and then they go Bloodstained Mire, pass. Sure, can't really read anything to that. So, obviously, Swamp is not a very exciting draw there, but we'll just play out a Scavenging Ooze and see what happens. Opponent's got the fetch for a Stomping Ground. Interesting. Okay. Not sure what to make of Stomping Ground into Copperline Gorge, so clearly something that's red-green heavy. And it's a Cathartic Reunion, discarding Bloodghast and Narcomoeba, so we, my friends, are against the hated Dredge. But guess what? You remember how I said our opening hand was really blah? Well, not when it's against Dredge. Double Scoos on the play. Just about as good as you can ask for against Dredge, short of finding our one of Nile Spellbomb, right? So, Scavenging Ooze, very, very happy about you in my opener all of a sudden. And Verdant Catacombs, we're continuing to draw no action, but that fetches me a forest, so I'm totally fine with that. This is now officially a Scavenging Ooze game. So, what you have to do against Dredge is know what cards you have to take before you let them untap, and what cards you can afford to leave even if they're good ones to eat. So, for example, Narcomoeba here is a fine card to eat because it just gains us a life and grows the Scoos. But we don't really need to. We needed to eat this Bloodghast because we can't respond, we could respond to the landfall trigger, but if it's a fetch land, we'd have to eat it twice, and that's very inefficient. It can put us shields down against other follow-up plays. So eating the Bloodghast is something you have to eat now, in my opinion, but the Narcomoeba not so much. So knowing how good Scavenging Ooze is here, but also how well they can assemble a bunch of must-answer stuff in the graveyard, we chose to be really conservative here, leave up 2 Scoos activations, and technically leave up Assassin's Trophy, but really we're just leaving up the Scoos. And we're passing. Faithless Looting, sure. So the opponent pitches Dark Blast and Life from the Loam. This is what I'm talking about. They've got 2 Dredge cards in here now. 2 Dredge cards is very, very, very not good. And they have a follow-up play of Cathartic Reunion, pitching Creeping Chill and Narcomoeba. So some other cards that don't matter that much right now, but this draw 3, if we didn't have both of our Ooze activations, they would get to Dredge this turn, and that is the last thing we want. This is why we were really conservative, so we're going to respond by eating the 2 Dredge cards, Life from the Loam and Dark Blast, and then they just have to naturally draw 3, which, still lets them see a lot more of their deck, but basically, the name of the game is do not let them Dredge, do not let them get the free stuff back. And, You know, Thoughtseize is actually a really interesting draw there. I actually almost played the Thoughtseize, but I was like, all right, I was being very conservative last turn, holding up the Skoos. I think the highest upside play here, while still being pretty safe, is to play out my second Skoos here. This hedges me against like a random main deck Lightning Axe, something like that. And again, there's nothing in their graveyard at this exact moment that we absolutely have to eat before they untap. So we do get to just pass. Feels a little weird that we're not using our Ooze as aggressively in terms of growing it as you might think we would, but I think this is the correct way to play against Dredge. Also feels a little bit weird to leave that Faithless Looting in, but remember, unless they have a Dredger in the yard, the Faithless Looting, it's just card selection, it's velocity, it fills up their graveyard, that's all fine, but it's nothing that we can't let happen, you know? So they find Prized Amalgam Life from the Loam, like these are cards that we definitely need to take care of more proactively, right? And they've got Affection to another Faithless Looting, so guys, they had a no turn one Faithless Looting, they had a little slow start, but they've been putting together all kinds of stuff, so we really had to be patient with our Oozes here in order not to get run over, even with a turn 2 Ooze on the play, excuse me. So we eat the Dredger in response, we don't need to do anything else, and they loot away a Stinkweed Imp and another Amalgam. So that's going to be all they've got for the turn. And here now on the end step, it's safe to activate the Ooze again. And again, we take care of the Dredger. It's one that can grow the Ooze. We'll spread the love between our two Oozes again in case of like a Lightning Axe or something. So Hissing Quagmire, sure. Like we're drawing like almost literally nothing good, but it doesn't matter because we've got these Oozes, right? We've got the Ooze brothers getting in. And here, you know, it's pretty safe. Again, I like to leave 2 activations up here in this situation, so pretty safe to eat at least 1 Amalgam here, get a little extra damage across. This puts them to 3, that means either Ooze connecting next turn is lethal. And we'll play the Marsh Flats, and we'll fetch. Our life total is very, very high, so we're just being ultra super conservative here, and we're going to eat the looting. This time we're not going to let them have the looting, and we'll pass. We could have Thoughtseize there as well. Again, I almost cast the Thoughtseize, but whatever. You know, I don't think there's anything they can really have main deck that beats this, but they're going to give it a shot. Another Cathartic Reunion, so they've got all the enablers, but they take their natural draws because we've taken away all their Dredgers, and then they just scoop it up. So Scavenging Oozes, the main deck Grave Hate, the proactive main deck Life Gain Grave Hate clock, getting it done with some really patient use case of their activated ability. And make no mistake, the opponent had a very, very good progression. The only thing they didn't have is turn 1 Faithless Looting or Shriekhorn, which, to be fair, could have made the difference in this matchup, but beyond that, they had absolutely everything, and we were able to handle it. So it is always a huge, huge upside to take down Dredge Game 1. They are, like, supposed to win Game 1, so I've, however, won Game 1s and then dropped the 2 post-side games as well. So even though our deck is a lot better, it's not something to take lightly. Let's go to the sideboard and see what's up. Okay, everybody, against Dredge. Well, you guessed it. We want the Grave Hate. You've seen me do this before, I'm sure, but for those who haven't, here it is. Nihil Spellbomb ×2, Grafdigger's Cage, Surgical Extraction. These are our best cards by far. Otherwise, there are some things that can come in, but let's look at what's bad maybe first. These 4 cards we for sure want no matter what. In terms of what's bad, Liliana of the Veil is our worst card. All 4 of her can come out, no question about it, and that's a clean 4 for 4. So now we're coming down to trimming around the edges, and while these cards are not as bad as Liliana of the Veil, I still pretty much just like taking out all of these 2 CMC single target removal pieces. They're just not that relevant. If you need more cuts, I would look to a card like Tireless Tracker. Very slow, doesn't line up that well on board. It's not a matchup where we grind most of the time, so if you need another cut, it could be the Tracker, but I don't know that we have enough to bring in. Let's find out. Maelstrom Pulse is also not a very good card, but I actually bring the second one in because it's just a little bit better, you know, than Trophies and Decays and Liliana's for sure. Like it can just kind of there are situations where it can get him. It's not good, but it's better than it's the best of some bad stuff, I guess. Collective Brutality is a card I'm a little more excited to bring in. Taking away the Cathartic Reunions and the Faithless Lootings out of their hand is basically why this card is in here. The Life Drain is not nothing either. The -2/-2 can be good if there's Kalitas or Skoos to make sure they stay gone. But really, this is in there probably more than anything for the discard effect, which is why our 1-mana discard stays in. Again, these cards aren't good against Dredge, but better than a lot of what else we have to do. So 2 more cards to come in. It should be some combination, in my opinion, of Kitchen Finks, Languish, and Liliana the Last Hope. None of them are great. And, Languish to me is something I've always thought, should I bring this in? I never really do. I can just see situations where I've got like a Dark Confidant going off and we're trying to stay in the game, and it's like, do I Languish? I don't know. I think even though Lily the Last Hope and Kitchen Finks are not the greatest, probably better than Languish. So that's what our 60 and this Tireless Tracker stays in, again, because we don't have enough cards to bring in that are better. So that's what our 60 is going to look like. We've got a lot of really good stuff and a lot of pretty bad stuff. There's not all that much that's in between. But anyway, that's how we do it against Dredge. Let's go to game 2. Alright, my friends, on the draw here against Dredge, and our hand is pretty sweet, to be honest. It's not the best you've ever seen, but it looks a little clunky at first glance, but it's actually pretty well balanced. We've got the potential for turn 1 Inquisition, which can be really good, or we can go turn 1 Nihil Spellbound. Either way, we can choose to do the other one on turn 2 that we didn't do on turn 1, and or play a Tarmogoyf. Now, Tarmogoyf is actually a very, very good card in this matchup. On top of that, it's a functional hand. It's got 3 lands. Tireless Tracker is not very exciting, but looks like we'll be able to get her going if we're still in the game. So, at some point. So, sure, it is definitely a keep. Opponent's going to lead off on the Wooded Foothills. And they're going to pass. Alright, no turn 1 Shriekhorn, no turn 1 Faithless Looting. This is great for us. We draw Treetop Village, which is not very good. However, that's alright. What do we do here? So, obviously, the big question is, do we Spellbomb or do we Inquisition? I chose to Inquisition because I figure if they kept 7, then they didn't have a turn 1 discard enabler, they've got to have a Cathartic Reunion. I can't imagine them keeping a 7 without one of those 3 cards in this matchup. So, I took perhaps the higher risk, higher reward play, but the one that I think is correct, and I went ahead and Inquisitioned them. So, let's see what they're working with. They've got another land. They've got 2 Narcomoebas, which are pretty bad to have in your hand. They've got Lightning Axe, which is a good answer to our Scavenging Ooze for sure, and potentially to other creatures as well. They've got Conflagrate, which is a great card in the deck, and indeed they have that Cathartic Reunion, so our decision gets rewarded. We take away the Cathartic Reunion, and now, they're kind of at the mercy of their top deck in terms of finding something they're really happy to play as an enabler for starting to fill up the yard. They play the Wooded Foothills, and they just pass, so they didn't find anything like that this exact turn. We draw Thoughtseize. Okay, that's not really the worst, and I thought about getting really, really clever here and just discarding again, but then I was like, no, let's respect the deck. It's still Dredge, just because we've been flying high in this series so far doesn't mean that we need to be cavalier and just assume our discard is going to keep crippling them. Now, taking away that Lightning Axe is fine, but let's get our actual Grave Hate down on the field first. So, Nihil Spellbomb and pass it is. And of course, we still could have Thoughtseized and just planned to crack the Spellbomb for no draw, if that's what the situation called for. But I rate the draw pretty highly here. But they just go ahead and get that Conflagrate in their yard. Sure, nothing that makes me need to clear out the graveyard quite yet. Now, Overgrown Tomb, that's actually a pretty decent draw here, because that gives me 2 colored mana sources this turn, and it does let me Thoughtseize aggressively. So we see another Conflagrate, a Lightning Axe, and again, a bunch of stuff that's not great to have in their hand, all their creatures. So their hand's not actually very good. That was really leaning heavily on that Cathartic Reunion that we took away. So we take away the Lightning Axe, and that means we get to get proactive here and play the Tarmogoyf. And I think that sequence, that double spell turn is worth potentially not having the draw available to us from Spellbomb. Now, our Goyf will die if they choose to pitch their whole hand here to Conflagrate. That is just fine with me, because we've got another threat to follow it up. We still haven't cracked our Spellbomb. That would be just fine with me. So, let's see what they do. And yep, they have to pitch their whole entire hand, which does, to be fair, include a Stinkweed Imp, so that makes it better for them. But, yeah, they're down to 0 cards. They took care of our Tarmogoyf, and they filled up the graveyard, but we have a Nile Spellbomb, and we have the luxury of untapping. So, looks like we're in a pretty good position to me, and we draw Scavenging Ooze. Now, the only problem we were going to have before is that we couldn't play our Tracker and crack the Spellbomb and draw, but now, psh, we've got a better play anyway, so we get to Spellbomb, clear out their entire yard, so now they have no board, no hand, no graveyard. Seems alright to me. And then we have a Tarmogoyf, so that was kind of a tempting play, actually, but I chose to play the Skoos. We've got 3 green sources we're going to untap with. Skoos is pretty amazing here, and is going to probably be better against any potential comeback they would try to mount from here. But either way, they are in dire straits at this point. Maelstrom Pulse, not the most exciting draw, but... So here there was no way to fire up Treetop Village and play a creature and hold up Skoos, so I chose to be mana efficient here, play the Tracker, play the Quagmire. You know, the Goyf is technically a better clock, but I'm pretty happy with that sequence right there. We hold up the just 1 Skoos activation, but again, they're at the total mercy of their top deck, so that should be all we really need in order to play safe. And they don't have anything. They pass. Okay, Fatal Push. That's a fine draw at this stage of the game. We'll crack a clue, increase our clock, looking for more lands, basically, or more Grave Hate. We don't find it, but that's alright. We're quite far ahead. So here, come across for 6, and we'll play our Goyf. Again, we get to hold up the Skoos, and now they're facing lethal on board, even without activating our Treetop Village. Okay, the opponent takes their draw step. What have they got? Shriekhorn, sure. So a little late to the party, but they're going to try to put something together. They find a land and a life from the loam into the graveyard off the horn, okay. Then there's a Faithless Looting, so that's going to let them dredge, and we say no to that. We say no to that. We're going to eat the loam in response. They get to loot, and they pitch a Bloodghast and another life from the loam, but that is about it. They don't have any other follow-up plays. They're just dead on board, so... Whew! Beating Dredge 2-0. That is not going to happen every day, my friends, and, you know, we had a very, very good, obviously, blind game 1 hand of double Scavenging Ooze on the play, with enough lands to leverage their power. No question about that. We got the luck of the draw in this one. And here in game 2, we had a pretty reasonable hand here as well, but I think the most important decision we made was that turn 1 Inquisition instead of the turn 1 Nile Spellbomb. Because they didn't have a turn 1 Enabler, no Shriekhorn, no Faithless Looting on turn 1, that's our cue. They kept 7, they didn't have a turn 1 Enabler, they've got to have Cathartic Reunion, in my opinion, and in this case it proved to be correct. So that's how we won that one, and of course we had some decent progressions along the way here as well, no question about it. We do need our deck to comply to beat Dredge. We're not going to be able to outplay our opponent with bad draws in this matchup, with us having bad draws. We need to play well, but we also need to have some decent draws, and as it turns out, we did both here, so feels good, man, feels good. To take down Dredge. Dredge is not an easy one by any means, but we got him. We advanced to 3-1, and yeah, setting us up for a potentially decent finish here in round 5. Let's find out what happens. Alright, my friends, round 5 of this competitive league. I hope you're enjoying it so far, and we're on the play, and we have the only thing resembling a balanced game 1 hand that we've seen in this whole league. It's got a threat, it's got our flex interaction, it's got a planeswalker, It's got all the lands we need, including some man lands, so this is a very well-balanced hand. We will keep it, and we're happy that we're on the play with such a hand, because it is slow. It is slow, it is somewhat conditional, but definitely seems like an alright one to me. Wooded Foothills Pass. So I can't help but wonder if this is another dredge one, because that's what we saw game one. But if it is, we're happy to have the Skoos. And they go get a Stomping Ground, so, you know, so far it's an exact mirror, besides the exact lands we played. Windswept Heath is not a dredge card, though, so they're just going to pass. I don't know what I'm up against. I really don't. There's, you know, Naya something or other, maybe. It's hard to say. Let's attack with our Scavenging Ooze before anything else happens. Alright, they just take 2. So here, you know, whatever they're doing, Liliana is hopefully going to be good against it. So especially because we drew another Liliana for turn, I'm pretty happy to shock in there, take out the Liliana, pitch our other Liliana, because, you know, again, who knows what we need in this matchup, and start finding out a little bit about what they're up to. They pitch Deceiver Exarch, so this is the old Splinter Twin combo card that also serves as kind of a tempo play. It's a 1/4 flash with an ETB trigger of either untapping a permanent they control or tapping a permanent we control. So, alright, you know, this is, you know, probably not played as only a value piece, so I am expecting some kind of a creature-based combo deck on the other side. So they go get a Temple Garden, so Naya confirmed, and there's also blue, so 4-color, you know, Wet Naya, whatever you want to call it, and they have an Eternal Witness, always a good card against us, no matter basically what the situation. Eternal Witness is always one that's good against us. They buy back a fetch land, sure, you got it. Alright, we draw yet another Liliana of the Veil. So here, let's see if they want to chump block. We can gobble up the Exarch, whether or not they block, so we'll do that. Get in for a little bit more damage. And we're pretty happy to just Edict away the Witness. We're keeping the board clear, you know. Again, we're expecting it to be some kind of a creature combo deck. Now we know that Vannifar Pod is a thing. We know that before that, like Eldritch Evolution decks, Court of Calling decks, Toolbox decks have been a thing. A lot of these decks can leverage an Eternal Witness. It's expendable, like it comes down, it gets the value, and then they can somehow cash it in, again, whether through Vannifar or Evo or whatever, for something better, right? So, pretty happy there, especially because we still don't know exactly what's going on, to just play it safe, Edict the board away, take away a future chump blocker and or combo piece, and we're going to pass Holding Up Trophy, Holding Up Skoos. They play a Forest, they pass, so sure, we're just going to gobble up Witness, go to turn. Let's take our Lily up. Again, we still don't really know what they're up to, so I'm going to pitch yet another Liliana here, and they pitch Eldritch Evolution. Okay, so our read has been corrected as some kind of an Evo deck, some kind of a creature combo deck. And I feel like ending the game. I feel like putting this game away, so let's go ahead and fire up the Treetop Village here. I don't think we're going to use Collective Brutality this turn, so pretty happy to just fire up the village and then hold up Trophy and Skoos just like we did last time. The opponent is tapping out for something that's probably not good. Restoration Angel. Okay, so here is a classic example of why I edicted away the Witness last turn, because imagine blinking the Witness there. The value is huge. The value is huge. So, pretty happy here to just trophy away the Angel. It doesn't do anything here except become a 3/4 flash flyer, but we don't want that to eat our treetop and then stick around, you know, maybe kill our Lily on the crackback or whatever. Very happy to just trophy that away. So the opponent makes yet another land drop, and what do they have next? Well, they're tapping 5, and they're playing a Zealous Conscript, so yeah, this is a 3/3 haste when it enters the battlefield. Gain control of target permanent until end of turn. Untap that permanent, it gains haste. Well, they can either take our Skoos and attack our Lily, or they can take our Lily and edict our Skoos, and they choose the latter. So they clearly don't think they can beat the Scavenging Ooze with what they've got in hand, and they just play a Birds of Paradise and pass. We draw Swamp. Now, I misplay this turn. Let me take the turn and see if you can realize it, because I realized it like as soon as I did it. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and escalate. We're going to brutality the birds. We're going to drain them for 2. Then we take up the lily. It's asymmetrical, so far this feels really good, right? It's nice value all around. They lose a Kiki-Jiki, so we know that this is a Kiki-Jiki combo deck. Kiki-Jiki plus Restoration Angel is one of the combos that are built into this deck. And then we fire up the Treetop Village, and they're at 1, so of course they have to trade this away. So let's see what happens here. Sure enough, they trade it away. So as I was going through this turn, did you... Oh, and then the opponent just takes their draw step and scoops it up. Cool. So we got him. Hissing Quagmire presenting lethal. Do you see where I misplayed? So it was kind of, like I said, it was something I realized as soon as I did it. But if I had -2'd the Zealous Conscripts instead of the Birds of Paradise, then they only have combined toughness of 2 for that turn. Treetop Village tramples, and if I escalated the swamp to drain them for 2 just like I did, then they would actually have just taken lethal right then and there, because trample is going to put that last point of damage over the top. So I took my turn. I was like, yeah, swamp doesn't do anything. Oh, but escalating is actually great here because they're at such a low life total, so we'll just kill the birds. And then as soon as I cast it, I was like, oh no, I should have taken my time there. Very unintuitive to use the brutality just to minus something when you've got a clean kill sitting on the table there. But if I had just taken another second, I would have seen it. I saw it immediately, and I wonder if you did too. That's why I didn't tell you right away. So definitely always remember Treetop Village has trample. Opponents sometimes forget it. You'll see them assign a chump block. A couple times I've had them send Treetop Village at a Planeswalker that's down to 1 or 2, and they chump it with a Monodork, and it's like, man, you just threw that away for nothing. So we have to remember, of course, we always should remember that our village tramples, but also remember how that can interact with stuff like Collective Brutality. Very corner case stuff, and we were so far ahead here, it doesn't matter. But still, we got to take the right lines, so that's the one I should have taken. Regardless, we put Kiki combo to the sword. Kiki Cord, probably, maybe, or Kiki Lucian. We don't still know exactly what's in this deck. They could be hybridizing Vanifar Pod with this stuff. It's really hard to say without seeing more of the deck. But for now, we know we're against some kind of a creature-based combo deck that uses Kiki-Jiki. And let's go to the sideboard with that in mind. Alright, my friends, we're siding against this Kiki deck without full knowledge of exactly what they're up to, so I'll show you what I did here. Basically, I explained in a reference to, for example, why I edicted away that Eternal Witness last game, we want to keep the board clear as much as possible. So in that sense, it's like a normal creature matchup, where we want Maelstrom Pulse, we want Engineered Explosives, we want Languish, we want Liliana the Last Hope. These cards all seem very good to me. Deathmark is also good. It's not going to hit everything. It's not going to hit Kiki. It's not going to hit Zealous Conscripts, as we saw, but it's going to hit their Monodorks. It's going to hit a lot of their mid CMC value plays. It's going to hit Restoration Angel. It's going to have enough targets where we do want this 1 mana kill spell in this matchup for sure. I would say, even if we don't know exactly what they're up to. Beyond that, it's a little bit hard to say. They're a combo deck, but whether we want Surgical Extraction, I said no until there is more information known to us. So, Surgical was a no for me. Grafdigger's Cage, however, was a yes. We saw Eldritch Evolution and we saw Eternal Witness. They are probably playing, another way to tutor, whether it be Vanifar or Chord of Calling or something like that. You never really know what these toolbox players are up to, but Grafdigger's Cage, we've seen enough to know that this card should come in my opinion. Nile Spellbomb you could maybe consider, because again, they're getting some value out of the graveyard, but I just left my 1 main deck 1, and I think that's sufficient. We'll say no to these for now. Kitchen Finks and Collective Brutality are both maybe. Sphinx, of course, just a good value for money in the Creature Wars, and Collective Brutality as another kill spell can take away Eldritch Evolution, but there are a lot of plays they might have that can go over the top of this as well. So I think I put that in the maybe board card until I looked at the rest of my deck, and then we don't really want Nissa, we don't really want Fulminators here, right? So let's bring in these 6 cards. Let's say we'll consider these 2. Now, what do we like least? So this is a matchup where they're probably going to pivot to a more grindy, value-oriented plan while still keeping the combo around. For that reason, we want to hedge. We want to keep in some discard, we want to take out some others, in my opinion. I chose to cut away Inquisition. We want to be able to Thoughtseize the Angels, the Kikis, whatever else they've got going on. And I think we can afford the loss of life in this case. It's not like Spirits where they pressure our life total extremely effectively, right? We have to be mindful of our life total, but I still think Thoughtseize is the way to go. Otherwise, you know, honestly, everything else we have is looking pretty darn good to me. So, but we've got to make some kind of cuts. Cutting one Liliana in situations like this is totally fine. You could maybe even cut the second one on the draw. So that's an option. We also probably want to cut away one threat here, just be a little bit more answer heavy. And I think I cut a Tireless Tracker because we've got Bob as a very proactive advantage engine. We've got Skoos that can punch through some damage while messing with their stuff like Eternal Witness. And we've, of course, got Tarmogoyf that we never cut, unless it's Merfolk. Maybe we cut one. You know, Kalida's great in this matchup, too. So I think Tracker is the worst of our threats, so I'm pretty happy to cut just one of her. And from there, you know, it's not easy to make this last cut, so I think what I did is I actually cut away a second Lily of the Veil. Because we were on the draw, because we're not exactly sure what we're up to, we're kind of hedged with a setup like this. But maybe we'll see more of the deck, we'll say, oh, this Nile Spellbomb, we can afford to cut that, or something like that. But I chose to side a little bit conservatively at the end of the day. We left out these maybe board cards, and, you know, the other thing you could do is maybe cut a Thoughtseize here as well. But until we know more about the deck on the draw, I'm very happy with this setup. So let's go to game 2, see what happened. Alright everybody, we're here on the draw against this Kiki deck, and they're mulling to 6, which is a great sign for us. Our hand's a little bit clunky, it needs a third land for sure. We've got a very clunky land base, but this hand is got some very powerful things in it. We're going to keep it. The opponent's going to keep 6, so no mulls to Oblivion, no free win for us here, but it's just Breeding Pool Pass. Swamp was a fantastic draw here. Swamp allows us to go turn 1 Thoughtseize, which is just what we're going to do. And we see another couple lands. We see that they've scryed to the bottom as well, as I recall. So maybe they scryed another land to the bottom? Hard to say. Can't really read too much into that. Could have been anything, really. But we see a clunky hand, to be frank. There's nothing to do before turn 4 as things stand, unless we give them a target for Phantasmal Image. So between that and the fact that Shalai, Voice of Plenty, is actually just kind of a pretty solid card against us anyway, I went ahead and took the Shalai. It feels a little bit weird when we're on the draw in some ways to take their highest CMC card. Usually we'd be more interested in slowing them down, but they're already doing a pretty good job of slowing themselves down, but now they have a good proactive turn 2 play. Wall of Roots was the play, so that's pretty good for them. And what can we do about it? Well, I think we do just want to Fatal Push this thing. There was an argument for hoping they would play like Phantasmal Image, then we could blow them out, but I don't think they're going to. I think they're either going to use it to ramp into a 4-drop that they rip off the top, or they're just going to Eldritch Evolution, right? So I just went ahead and Fatal Pushed. We have no way to, on that turn, get Revolt and push a higher CMC thing anyway that they tutor up, so sure, let's just not mess around. We're going to push the Wall of Roots. And, you know, they drew a Steam Vents for a turn. We still know their full contents of their hand. So, pretty good for us, and for that reason, we don't want to give them a Phantasmal Image target, so I'm pretty happy to just say, Field of Ruin, go. Field of Ruin gives us access to Revolt, and it gives us something to do. They are a 4-color deck. You know, fielding their dual lands might get us somewhere. So, they play Magus of the Moon. So, just got done talking about how they're a 4-color deck with all these duels. Apparently they don't care. They're just going to try to moon us out. Well, this is actually going to be pretty fine for us because we get to field in response. We're going to take care of the steam vents. So let me explain why I hit the steam vents here. There's 2 reasons. Number 1, they need triple red to cast Kiki. So I'm no expert on how to play against these decks, but it seems to me that attacking the red lands is pretty good. We also don't know, if they're going to play basic mountain, if they're going to have basic island. So that land in general seemed like a good one to attack. Then we also allow them to float a mana, then go get an untapped mana, which actually might incentivize them to play the Phantasmal Image this turn, which would be very good for us. So we let Magus resolve, Magus does resolve, and sure enough they go for the Phantasmal Image, so we get to blow them out so hard here, with a Fatal Push killing Magus of the Moon, and then Phantasmal Image has no target. So down it goes, and we draw Lily the Last Hope for the turn, which is a good one, and I thought about playing her. I also thought about going Field of Ruin into Kalitas, but I actually think the best play here is Tracker into Field of Ruin. Like, all of those plays are reasonable, but this is just the safest one. This is, like, it clocks even better than Kalitas, and, it gets us a guaranteed card. We're just not going to really fall behind at this point, hopefully. And now, highly rewarded for that decision by the Verdant Catacombs rip off the top. We're going to fetch main phase. We already know they have an evolution only in hand, so there's no risks in doing that. We get a forest to play around moon effects and to preserve our life total. So right now there's no way to have a double spell turn with what's in our hands, so we will crack a clue. Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf's a good one, but here, with all these clues, I'm going to just be mana efficient. We're just going to play Lily the Last Hope. She's going to help control the board. And here's the 4-3 coming in. Although I think Tarmogoyf there would have been perfectly reasonable as well. But who knows what they could have. I think this is like where every decision we've taken since we blew them out with the Fatal Push on the Magus of the Moon with Phantasmal Image on the stack has been like the safe decision. So I think that's how we want to pivot to in a situation like this. And they have a Birds of Paradise, so yep, they're going to get to... They've got an Evo target. Renegade Rallier, this is a pretty cute little chain. They get the Rallier, they get to buy back a Phantasmal Image, who becomes a Renegade Rallier, and then they get to buy back the Wall of Roots. So a very nice little sequence for them. However, we are rewarded once again for our sequencing, and specifically playing the Lily the Last Hope last turn, because now we get to slam the Kalitas. We get to take the Lily the Last Hope up to kill a Renegade Rallier. To kill a 3-drop seems really good, even though they kind of cheated it out. It's still very good. We get the zombie, it gets exiled. And here I just want to put the pressure on. I am so far ahead on resources, it's not even funny. We're equal on lands, I'm way ahead on board, and I have the virtual card advantage of 5. Like, 3 cards in hand, 2 clues, right? Plus I have more utility in my land base, so I am very happy to just see if he wants to take the trade, and he sure does. So that's an even 1-for-1 trade, plus we make a zombie off of it. Seems fine to me. We pull even farther ahead that way, and we don't need to lean on the tracker anymore, so she's done her job. And they have a Thragtusk as their rip off the top. Now, in other situations, that might be very, very good. Like, that's a bomb against us, make no mistake. It's huge, it dodges Fatal Push, it's 3-for-1 a lot of the time, the body, the life, and then another body it leaves behind. However, we are so far ahead that it really doesn't matter that much, so we just go ahead and trophy away the Thragtusk. We make another zombie. They get their 3-3, but we get to take the Liliana up, so now the 3-3 cannot do anything more than chump block here. It doesn't eat a zombie. We'll send in Kalitas and his 2 henchmen. They're going to assign a block on Kalitas with Wall of Roots, and I am very happy to just make this a Kalitas game now. We'll eat the zombie who's hanging back, become a 5-6, gain a bunch of life, take care of the wall, and our zombie even protects against this beast that we make after eating the wall. So this is just Kalitas. This is just Kalitas going off. Feels great. We'll play out our Shockland. they've got a noble hierarch off the top, not quite as good as their Rip of Thragtusk last turn, and we're drawing so well. The stylish Liliana tribal kill here, ticking up with Last Hope to go to 7 to kill the hierarch. Then we follow up with Lily of the Veil, edicting away the beast, and we get to Kalidas is just going insane with hunger. He's a 7/8. He and his zombies are going in for the kill. Man, was that ever a dominating display by Golgari Midrange, and that takes us over the finish line, taking down this Kiki deck comprehensively to finish the league at 4-1. So, man, we got rocked back on our heels after a very strong round 1 against Death Shadow, where we kind of showed him the business with just a high threat density, good interaction at the right time, so on and so forth, and lots of recursive value specifically in Game 2. Then we got rocked back on our heels by the Bant Spirits, who just kind of looked like they were, getting crippled by the maul into, our discard into our clock. But then that Coco and a double Reflector Mage just blew us out and they erased us. And then in Game 2, they got us again. They got us again with those evasive attackers up in the sky. Too many Lord effects for us to keep up with. So we got brought back down to earth by the spirits. But after that, man, we came back. We came back with a very, very good feeling victory against Dredge, and Dredge is not one that we normally expect to take Game 1 off of, but we sure did this time. Thanks to double scavenging use on the play, we took down Dredge, and that was basically one of the best feelings I've had. And then, of course, following up with the win Game 2, never hurts, never hurts. Actually, sorry, that was round 4. Round 3, we took down the mirror match. We took down Jund, that's right. So, the Jund game was really back and forth. All hope looked lost at multiple times over multiple games there for us, but Game 1, Tireless Tracker turned our flood into a thing of beauty. And then, Game 2, they fought back. They had a lot of really efficient turns with, some well-timed lightning bolts, things like this. But then Game 3, we fought through a lot of disruption. Those Inquisitions were still in post-board and they really hurt us, but we fought through the disruption and we came out on top. So, took down the mirror, and then we had the Dredge match, and then we capped it off with this beautiful performance against the Kiki Jiki deck. Feels good when the deck runs like this. So, the spirits stopped us, from perhaps achieving the lofty heights of 5-0. However, I will take 4-1s all day, every day. That is a fantastic result. Here in the comp leagues against the cream of the crop, we're cashing the leagues. We're making a little bit on top of that sometimes, and we're continuing to turn out really good results with Golgari Midrange. So, what more can you ask for? Well, we could ask for the 5-0, but it didn't happen this time. Maybe next time. Anyway, my friends, I really, truly hope you have enjoyed the plethora of replay content I've been bringing you lately. I do plan to still go back to the live recorded stuff at some point, but lately I've either had very tiny blocks of time where I'm just playing like a game at a time, no time to set up the recording stuff really, or I've had big blocks of time where I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to, yeah, okay, I can play the whole league, let's just play the whole league and then we'll record it later, right? So, it's just been working out better for me lately to do it this way, and I hope you're enjoying it. I sure am having a lot of fun playing and commentating and recording for you. So remember, my friends, if you would like to support this content, if you would like to exchange value for value, you know what to do. Grimflayer MTG is on Patreon. You can access some of the reward tiers. You can check all that out in the description below. It would mean a lot to me. We're very close to our $100 per month goal, and a couple new Patreons could really just get us there. So please consider doing that if you're not already doing so. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, well, you really should. You really should. That would help me grow as well, and I would really appreciate it. So let me know what you thought about these games as always. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned to the channel. I might have to take a break. This might have been my big burst of content, and we might go back to a little bit of a slower pace from here on out. But who knows? Maybe I'll be able to squeeze in just as many leagues. We'll have to see how it all goes. Either way, stay tuned to the channel, because I will have more gameplay and more analysis and more deck techs and more of the other stuff, everything you love, coming your way in the near future. So until then, I will talk to you next time. I hope you have a great night.